Hey everybody, welcome to another model building workshop, and today we're going to be looking at this guy. This is the Hotchkiss H39. It's a French light tank, and which is something that's unusual with the new Tamiya boxing, is that we're also getting the Panzerkampfwagen 38H 735F. So what that means is in this one box you're going to get the French version of the tank and the captured German version as well. So this is a brand new Tamiya kit, all new molds of this French light tank from the Battle of France in 1940, and of course it's served on with the Germans and some other units after, afterwards. So, and what I mean by other units is I think Israel had some of these much later that they used. But that's a whole other story. Anyway, so let's look at this new brand new kit. It's probably been around in Europe and other places for a little bit. It's finally just getting to the shelves here at hobby shops in the New England area. So I'm pretty happy to finally find one. And we're gonna take a look at this particular one that's pictured here. It's one of your marking options. You get two marking options in this kit, and we can explore some other options too. But this one's a well photographed vehicle, and we'll get into that momentarily. Something else I'd like to talk about very briefly is, we just lost the head of Tamiya just recently. Just want to give a shout out to Shinsaku Tamiya, 1934 to 2025. He was a very important man with the company, and hats off to him for creating so much joy and fun with the hobby for all those years. Anyway, we're going to look at one of their latest. I think this is a great picture for a box covering. I don't know what you think. I really think that's a nice shot. Let's see what we get in the box here. So, get your typical Tamiya instruction sheet and a little history book. Gives you the color breakdowns and Tamiya colors, and of course by name. And some of the things you're going to be looking for here, well, depending, because sometimes Tamiya likes to market some of their new paints. So they're suggesting dark yellow 2, dark green 2, and red brown 2, some of the new colors they put out, which is probably accurate for the German version. Although for some people like me that have the older type 1 of those, I may opt to use some of that, like I guess dark yellow 1, for example. And for the French one, what's it's talking about for the French one, I think is whole red and an olive green color. Okay, we'll take a look at that in more detail. So the instruction booklet is pretty clear. So again, there's two options here that they give you. So you're going to build up the hull. Put the front and rear on there. They got poly caps that they like to use, which I tend to like that feature that Tamiya has been doing for many, many years now. Got the instruction of the bogey wheel set up there. Down the bottom. Do forgive my dehumidifier. It is a hot one here in New England today. And then we're getting into tracks, wheels. Again, this is a Lincoln length design here. Something they've been doing for a little while now. And it's kind of centered around, you line it up with this return roller here, and it all should fall into place. That's what, I haven't built this yet, but that's what they say, and I gather it's worked well in the previous kits. Different types of The two different types of idler wheels. Let me see. Yeah, we have two different sets of idler wheels. I have heard people complain that they're a little overly complicated. Who knows? I haven't built it yet. We'll find out if that's the case. So there's two different types. Now we get the whole top. There's quite a lot to this kit, considering this is not a big tank at all. Got your muffler, all your tools. There's an option of two different types of engine doors here for the engine compartment. You get a couple of options there. You get a jack to put on tools, and then we have the tail skid, which was designed to help the tank cross track. Why am I trenches? That's the word. Yeah, it helped them cross the trenches. Gee, blanking on that one, but that's what they're for. So it wouldn't slide down, to give it some extra room to slide and crawl out of a trench if it fell into one. That's what this is all about here. And spare tools. They get a chain, which they actually give you, and they tell you how to wrap it around. Then you get onto the gun. Now this is the H39, not the 35. So this is the long-barreled cannon, which has some added oomph for taking on tanks. The H35 had a short-barreled gun, which is more for taking out infantry, bunkers, etc. Wasn't so much of an anti-tank weapon. But this is the improved version, the 39. And what's nice about this kit is it gives you the two types of cupolas here. So there's one for the French and there's one for the Germans, because the Germans modified it by putting a hatch cover on that instead of the dome style that the French had. The Germans couldn't stand that dome style, so they put hatches so they could sit up in there and look out, which you can see here, and you can get your figure to do that if you do the German version. And of course you have the French tank crewman here, which they do as a separate figure that you can have standing outside the vehicle. The German one's designed to sit in the turret. Now let's take a look at this booklet here. So this is mainly acts as your painting guide. So you got these two beautiful examples here, one in the German the three-tone camouflage scheme, typical of the second half of the war, and then you get the French one in a green and brown color there, which is rather typical of toward the end of the Battle of France. You started seeing tanks looking like this, with big white numbers, and we'll get into that in just a second from some photos. Now, the German one is listed as being a German army unit, which is unknown, in January of 1945. I believe this was captured by the Americans. There is a photo out there of this vehicle. And of course, as I said, there's a lot of photos of this one here. And they give you some history, some stories to go with it, which is kind of nice. And some details. We'll look quickly at the pieces here. I won't get too carried away, but keep in mind that's the size of your parts. Again, it's not a big tank. I'll show you an example of what I mean by that. Here's your crew figures and a few other parts. Not going to take it out right now. So you see the tail skid there. Your figures are there. Here's your turret dome. You can see there if you do the French version. Your chain is an actual chain, which is kind of cool. And this is your suspension system and tracks, which doesn't look that terrible when you look at it set up like this. afraid of losing this stuff. Be careful. Doesn't look that daunting, really. Now, for many years, the only kit you had out there to work from was the Heller version, which I have one right here. And this is a rather fictitious paint scheme. I just thought I would experiment with airbrush techniques here. But this is the Heller version. This is the one that was around since the 70s. And the H39 has a flat back, and the later versions have the tail skid, which is not something that the Heller kit had. And the Heller model has, like I said, has been out there since the 70s, and it gave you the option of building the H35, which is the shorter gun and a sloped back, and the 39, which has the longer gun and the flat back. Also, there are different exhaust configurations for the 35 and the 39. This is the 39, and I don't want to get into this too much, but other manufacturers gave you some spin-offs of things you could do. I think this is Trumpeter. That gave you other things you could do with the H35 hull, because the Germans, under I think it's Commander Becker in Normandy, decided to cut up a bunch of H35s and 39s and convert them into all sorts of specialty equipment. This one here being an observation vehicle for artillery units in the Normandy area. So there's a lot of these types of creations and self-propelled guns that they did too. And we'll look at some of that in another episode. So for building this new kit, we have another magazines out there too. This is Military Model Craft International. And what issue is this one? This is from May of 2025, issue 343. This has a nice article about how to build this kit. Don't want to get into it too much, but I do want to show you something that they recommend. And this is something I'll think about. As you can see here, they add some texture to get a more cast iron look to, a cast look to the parts of the Hotchkiss, because a lot of the French stuff was done with cast metal. And I think we're running into trouble here. No, I think we'll hang on. We'll probably wrap this up a little quickly. But they do recommend using like a Mr. Surfacer to try to get you that sort of look. So that is, and there's some paint that goes with it. Sorry. That's by Attacker, so there is a set of paint out there. All right, we'll talk about painting and color and the photographs in the next episode. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.